That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about The Damned, the directorial debut of Thordur Palsson, which premiered at the 2024 Tribeca Film Festival. Vertical Entertainment is releasing it January 3rd, 2025.
Directorial debut.
Yes, and its title, many films have been titled this. It's not to be confused with classics by Luchino Visconti or Joseph Losey, or even Roberto Minervini's film of the same name from last year.
What is this film about? A 19th century widow has to make an impossible choice when, during an especially cruel winter, a foreign ship sinks off the coast of her Icelandic fishing village. What is your pull quote?
It's a cruel, cruel winter. A moody moral fable with more than enough spooky flair to spare. The Damned is an ethical dilemma about the inherent ickiness of survival at the cost of sacrificing other humans.
Mime. Palsson crafts a highly effective, if not familiar, horror thriller with The Damned. More simple.
Damn, damn, damn.
Yeah, I thought this was very good.
Yes, and again, I think it's all in the establishment of the mood and the tone.
I like this more than Nosferatu. I thought it was creepier.
I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's simpler. It's biting off less to chew.
So I'm saying it's familiar because I feel like every culture, every country has a film like this. Mm-hmm. But this one really benefits from the landscape, mm-hmm. which is this Icelandic fishing town during the winter. So it's frigid, Arctic, hazy, desolate. And then we get some really good performances, especially from the lead.
Ava, played by Odessa Young, who you also saw this year in The Order, opposite Jude Law, Nicholas Hoult. She was the pregnant side piece in that film.
That was her?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's been in quite a few
I really
things.
like that movie too.
Mm-hmm.
But the story, so 19th century Icelandic fishing village, and it's, isolated. And the main house, or how do they refer to it? Like the station?
The dormitory.
The post?
Wherever. Yeah, because it's a fishing outpost.
Outpost. The outpost is owned by Ava. Mm-hmm. And she runs it alone because her husband died not too long ago out fishing. So we see them bebopping around. It's been a rough winter. Food is kind of, supplies dwindling. So that's been established. When one day they're all out during the daytime and they see in the distance that a ship is capsizing. And it's in an area that they understand to be kind of treacherous. It's actually the area where Ava's husband got hemmed up.
The ship's gotten too close to shore.
And it's hit like rock, and so it's sinking. So of course you have these 10 people out there deciding what should we do. The moral dilemma of do we go help them? And they're kind of divided because some are like, well, obviously we have to go help. What if that were us? But the other half are saying, no, because we barely have enough supplies for ourselves. There must be 20 people out there. If we bring them here, we're all screwed.
Right.
And ultimately it's Ava who has to make the decision because she runs the joint. And she says, you're right. My top priority is to protect all of you, and we don't have enough supplies to help them. So unfortunately, we can't help them. So the next day, Ava's out on shore and she finds a barrel that is clearly washed up from that capsized ship, and it has supplies in it. So of course everyone's excited, we need to go out there and scavenge.
And there's a limited amount of time before the tide will carry any of that debris out.
That's right. Mm-hmm. So they decide to go at night when the tide is more predictable and the water is more settled. So they go out there in what I thought was a very creepy scene, because they're out in this water in the dark with a lantern, and they come up to where the wreck should be, and there are big rocks out there. And all of a sudden we see all these survivors hanging on for dear life onto this rock. Mm-hmm. And so of course they start jumping into the water trying to swim to their boat. But of course, if this boat accommodates all these people, it will probably sink. So they start fighting the people and killing some.
Yeah, that's the most troubling scene of the film, really.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they get back to shore. The next day, many dead bodies come up to shore. They put them in caskets. There is one other woman at the outpost. Her name is Helga. And she's talking about something called
the Draugr.
The Draugr, which is a
Norse mythology.
And basically it's like a zombie. So she's saying if you don't properly handle these bodies, like they're going to come back as these Draugrs. But of course everyone's like, that's crazy. But then weird things start happening.
Helga disappears.
With
food.
So Ava decides with some of the men to go check the caskets to see if one of them is missing. And sure enough, one is missing. So now they're all convinced that there's a Draugr on the loose. More things happen. People die. People are getting sick, acting really strange.
Delirious.
And everything culminates. Also, Helga had told Ava the only way to kill a Draugr is to burn it. So at the end, we see that Ava's like in her room and she sees the Draugr come into the room. She shoots it, sets it on fire. But at the very end, when she's sort of run out to safety, she's starting to think more clearly. And as the audience, we see that really she shot one of the survivors. It was in her mind, perhaps, that she saw the Draugr. Because initially we see the figure and it's like this monster looking thing. So you think it's more ambiguous than I do?
Yeah, I think it's more of a kind of along the lines of folk horror, fable, metaphor about guilt. And how that preys on our minds, especially in conditions such as these.
And I agree with you. And so there are a lot of films like this that I don't feel usually work because it's too ambiguous. This one was like giving me a little more to like sink my teeth into, that I really think like, oh, maybe there was something there.
I think the two lead performances, it's Odessa Young and Joe Cole, I think assist with that, because he's usually good when push comes to shove at playing intense. He's from Peaky Blinders and a pretty decent film called Prayer Before Dying.
I'm just going to go through my notes. The visuals are, I think, really strong for a film that probably didn't have the biggest budget. Strangely,
the cinematographer is Eli Arenson, who also did Lee Daniels' The Deliverance this year.
Really?
As well as The Watchers.
Because I'm sure there was some green screen used or...
Yeah, because there's some special effects work going on, yeah.
But it feels pretty seamless, and the sort of wide shots of the frozen ocean, the snow-capped mountains, the actual like village they're in. I thought all looked...
If you can call it a village. It is so sparse.
It is.
It was almost reminding me of like John Carpenter's The Thing, where they're just stuck out in this Arctic climb, and there's really, like, I think they said the next town is 3 days away. In the very end, when she's contemplating what's actually happened, and she's kind of vulnerable out in the element there, I don't know that she's going to live.
No, and I think, The Thing is a good reference, but like them walking through the snow and visibility being low, I thought that was all shot really well. I thought the scene where they see the boat capsize and sink was very effective.
Well, just, the horror of inaction. And then they're like, we're not going to fish out of respect today, but I don't know, it's a pretty bad feeling to have to live with that.
Yeah. And then we transition to them going out in the ocean at night, and of course that's just automatically creepy. But I thought the way it was shot, and then when we discover that there are people still alive, that was very creepy.
Well, when Joe Cole is the one that we see him bludgeon a young man.
That was shocking.
It was just shocking. Yeah. And that young man, when his corpse washes ashore, his abdomen's moving.
Yeah, so then it's like, what in the hell? So someone cuts open the abdomen, the intestines fall out along with eels. I thought that looked really good.
Eels always remind me of The Tin Drum. I know you've never seen that, based on the Günter Grass novel, which every time I see an eel, I think of that.
So Ava, when the men go out fishing after they've taken all the dead bodies that washed ashore, put them in caskets, Ava discovers like a little charm, like above a door. And so she questions Helga because it looks like some voodoo type stuff. And Helga says, well, it's a charm. It's actually like some wood from the ship that I made into like a charm to try to ward off the Draga. And that's when we first become aware of like what's potentially out there.
But it's almost like it's Helga herself that brings it upon them, because she's the one that puts it in their head.
That's what I was
It's
going
like skeleton key.
Yeah, and I thought that was very well done. Like you said, I think the fact that they're isolated and it's already feeling kind of bleak really allowed them to get wrapped up in this idea.
Well, because it's almost like having to experience something like that is like you want to feel punished almost. Like there's something has to happen because it doesn't feel right, because it wasn't, but how can you atone?
Right. I thought the first time Ava has a vision of the Draga where she sees it like in a dark corner, I thought that was very effective. You said something funny. Who did you say Helga looked like? I can't be the only one who's shady.
Rupert Everett, a bit. But she's played by Siobhan Finneran from Downton Abbey.
So Helga says the only way to kill it is with fire. So we get some really cool visuals of Ava, like maybe having like visions of fire.
Of hellfire, yeah.
That I thought looked really good. When she starts opening those caskets, I'm like, oh my God. I thought that was super effective. And then after that body's missing, then they decide to do the ritual, which involves like nailing nails into the bottom of the dead's feet, binding them in a rope. And then they're supposed to take the casket and do like 3 turns. I thought that was very effective. So who's the guy who she kind of liked?
Joe Cole, Daniel.
I thought that was effective too, that there's sort of this maybe romantic connection between this man who knew her husband, but it's not like nefarious or anything. It's, you know.
It's a creature comfort.
But he at one point, because a lot of the men start, like they get fever and they start hurting others. We're told, like one day they bring him in and his face is all hurt. And we're told that he fell on the ice, like in the water, and hit rocks. And so she tries to stitch him up. And then later he comes to see her and clearly there's something wrong with him. And he slices his throat right in front of her. I thought that was very effective too.
Well, rather than be violent towards her, because he's knocked the other guy on the ground.
That's right. But yeah, there were a lot of creepy elements. I think this filmmaker really maximized the resources they had.
Yeah, and I think the script is taken from a story he himself had written.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I thought the story was compelling.
Yeah.
And, sometimes keeping it more simple is better. This is really a good example of like knowing what you have and how to maximize it. And then it still turns out so well.
It reminded me, I kind of had a feeling about this afterwards, like this film we reviewed, I think 4 years ago now, called The Dark and the Wicked.
Okay.
With Mar in Ireland, set on a farm. And I think they're dealing with dying parents. And there's a supernatural element as well. Xander Berkeley shows up as that priest that's trying to be invited
Yes, I recall that one.
I remember, I like that one. That has a little more of an edge than this one does to me, but I had a similar vibe of surprise.
Well, I would definitely be interested in watching this director's next film.
Yeah, for sure.
What would you give The Damned?
3.5.
I thought it was very good. I would give it 3.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.